Hello, everybody. Welcome on this Friday afternoon live. I have been sharing a lot about the kind of yoga side of things recently, so I thought maybe it's about time to talk Thai massage again. So I wanted to talk about treating back pain, which is, I'm sure most of you who give treatments will probably agree is what the most common complaint is when people come to you. But also I know that some of you have shared some interest in maybe joining the course that I have coming up, where we actually focus on the back and healthy backs and back pain. That's coming up in May. That's an advanced class. So because there was a few inquiries on that, I thought, okay, well, maybe let's speak about that and see. So two things before I kind of dive into that. One, you all already have lots of things in your toolbox already, and you are already able to support people in a great way. If you remember all the way back to level 1, how often I would say, and this is great for the lower back, and this is opening here, and so we've got lots of materials already and techniques. It's just maybe bringing a little bit more focus into it and really knowing how to choose the things that you include in your treatment. So I want to just kind of have a bit more of a look at that. And then the second thing is that, of course, it's, as always, not about fixing the person or resolving the issue. And it's a tricky one. People come to your space and want to have a treatment, and they say, oh, my back, and this is why I'm here. So obviously they have an expectation that they walk out without that back pain and that you kind of, fix them. And as we know, we can't fix anyone. So what is it that we do in a treatment? So yes, we are perfectly able to improve some of the conditions of whatever is going on in their system, in their body. We are working with the physical body as well. So of course we can maybe alleviate some of that muscle tension that might be at play here, or create some fascial release, or we might be able to help the pelvis align a little bit better. All of those things that will create much better conditions for the person to deal with whatever is happening there and at play. And I'll go into those areas during this talk. That's kind of like the point of where I want to get to. And of course, the other thing, as with all things that people come with in every treatment, it's about just facilitating that safe and comfortable environment for them to feel comfortable and safe enough for maybe some form of release, some sort of shift to happen. And maybe at that moment that you're giving that treatment, on that day, at that hour, it's not the time for it to happen. So to always remember that we go in with no agenda, because only then it is a safe space. And we need to be just as content with absolutely nothing changing as with, them kind of walking out and being pain-free. Obviously that's great if that happens, but it might just not, because it's just not quite there yet. So I want to talk about six areas that we can look at and that we can work with. It's not an exclusive list. Also worth understanding that it's hardly ever the case that it's all sort of black and white and linear, as in, this is the problem and that's why kind of thing. There's always this kind of interplay, because everything is working together and is related. So chances are that it's a whole mixture of things going on. Of course, as we know. But these 6 areas, I would say, are a good kind of starting point to give us some form of protocol of what we might want to look at in our treatment when somebody comes with back pain. So, one for sure is working the energy lines. No, so go right back to that information that you have, all of you at all levels of your training, right from level 1, and you've got all of the lines. Go away and take a look at that. So you want to work your 3rd inside and 3rd outside leg lines, and maybe you want to work those more intensively. So that's kind of like your basic, as well as the 1st and 2nd lines on the back. So, you know, do your groundwork lines for sure. So, you know, look at the energy body. So again, 3rd inside and outside lines on the legs, as well as sort of 2nd and 1st line along the back. Then, 2nd point is to think about stagnation in the body. And this is maybe something that we might not always think of so much, but stagnation can be really quite an issue because stagnation leads to disease. We know that. And there can be all sorts of reasons for stagnation in the body. And, you know, a Thai massage as a whole, in its wholeness, is definitely going to help remove some of that stagnation, to get things moving, to get things flowing, whether that is the energy or the blood or the lymph or, you know, any fluid in the body, whether that is to improve vitality and strengthen the tissues and resilience in the tissues, whether that's mobility through the joints, any joint. I mean, you know, there can be stagnation building up around all of the joints. So just know that a Thai massage as a whole is such a great treatment to alleviate stagnation, and it will do that anyway. And maybe you could pay a little bit more attention to the fact that that's the case, and observe your person. You know, what else are they telling you about the issue, and could stagnation be a possible problem? You know, that they are just for whatever circumstances not moving much at the moment, or, you know, that they are really kind of deflated or stiff or holding themselves or whatever it might be. Or maybe there is a different kind of health condition that might lead to stagnation, you know. So all of those things we can have a little bit of a look at, and that's actually also why we do blood stops. It's really to alleviate stagnation, especially in the legs. So, you know, do a blood stop in your treatment, because maybe you don't do blood stops very often because, I don't know, like I know quite a few people are sort of a bit about it, but they can be great for this. So play with that. Then of course muscles. Now there's a whole bunch of muscles that can carry an awful lot of tension, that could have some issues going on that we can look at. And again, no matter what level you're at with your training so far, you know, you're already kind of really working on most of them, I would say. So psoas muscle, we kind of all know about that, right? So one big kind of anxiety, tension carrier, I would say, and that can lead to really locking up the lumbar spine and the lower back. That gets fired in stress chronically. The QL muscle, so that's the kind of big ropey muscle either side of your lumbar spine, that can carry an awful lot of tension. Piriformis, also a bit of a culprit here. Working the butt, actually, the gluteus and the tensor fasciae latae, the TFL. All of that area, a good butt massage basically can do wonders, and obviously might also free up some of that pressure that it might be having on the sciatic nerve, so if people struggle with that. What else? So Diaphragm, for sure. It's also attached to the spine. And the whole kind of rib cage, diaphragm. Your transverse abdominals as well in that whole area. And then hamstrings, maybe also. We can look at even the adductor muscles, pelvic floor as well, in conjunction with the diaphragm, because they kind of work as a unit, for sure. So all of those muscles, and we all have quite a lot of techniques for all of this. No, we have all of the single leg movements that kind of create an opening around the lower back that work around all of the muscles in the pelvic and hip area. And we have a lot of techniques to torture that boomerang. So that's your kind of butt massage. We are working the legs, so the hamstrings we've got covered. Obviously, all of the muscles in the back as well, no, along the spine as well, and we're kind of doing all of that palming and thumbing of the line work around that area. So you know that you're definitely making a difference in your treatment. So maybe you could, again, just bring a little bit more focus, specific attention to that. And maybe you'll even find particular areas that are really, really tight, and you might pay a little bit more attention. Then the fourth area would be the internal organs, and all of you will hopefully remember this because we already spoke about that right in level 1 and level 2, that for people who suffer particularly from lower back pain, we would also give a thorough abdominal massage. So remember how the organs are all wrapped up in in a bag, and that bag is actually attached to the bone structure, to the lower back and to the pelvis, as in the lower spine, and the pelvis. Because otherwise, they need to hang off the structure, otherwise they'll fall out. So when there is inflammation, irritation, and tension in that area, that is going to very likely have an impact on the lower back. And a lot of lower back pain might well come from digestive issues. So internal organs, we definitely want to work good abdominal massage. Also, obviously, from a sort of more outer muscular tissue kind of point of view, you've got things kind of really wrapping around that whole part of the trunk, so that's also connected right there. And then along the spine you also have all of your points that actually relate to the organs. So we do want to do our line work again along the spine, to then also in turn maybe improve the functioning of the organs. But that's also maybe why, if there's something wrong with the organs, there's like a connection going right into the spine and maybe some discomfort. So colon, small intestines, and that piece of fascia that the small intestines are wrapped up in is called the mesentery, which is that attaches to the lumbar spine and to the hip bone. But also kidneys. So kidneys in the lower back, and you've got your adrenals sitting right over your kidneys. We know that kind of kidney energy from Chinese medicine is related to anxiety and stress and fear. So if anyone is going through a major change or something, or is facing a major challenge in whatever way, then they might have suddenly random complaints around the back. So I'll probably work on the kidney area a little bit more, and along the kidney meridian as well. And that's kind of without knowing, if you don't know exactly where the kidney meridian runs, but work in the back of the legs in prone position, you're going to get kind of near enough there already in the soles of the feet. So that would be also quite a good thing to cover. And again, you already know how to do that. What else is on my list here? And yeah, I mean, for sure, also the urogenital area and the bladder might be at play here. So something to maybe consider here is that kidneys and bladder, and then the sacrum, all of that is connected. So maybe you don't have any techniques directly for the bladder, for example, but indirectly you do. Plus it's the water element, so maybe you want to get a little bit more into the fluidity of things, into the flow of things, the kind of the following the tissues, and kind of giving the whole session a little bit more of that kind of watery quality of that flow in the quality of your touch. So that would also be a way of working with these things. And again, you all already have a whole bunch of techniques for that. We've all done already a little bit of rocking, for example. So that's very watery, for example, just as an idea. So go away and have a look at what is in your toolbox and how does that map out against those 6 areas that I'm going through, and see how much you've already got there. So I'm kind of hoping, or this is kind of like my intention here, that giving you those kind of 6 areas as a sort of starting point to look at is that it hopefully is helpful to realize what techniques and moves and things in your toolbox relate to what area, and that you actually got quite a big vocabulary, and that you can therefore sort of strengthen your focus in your treatment even more. So it's also about knowing that, so we've learned one move, and maybe I didn't mention this particular relationship, but it would be perfectly applicable also in this particular context. This is something that I've really learned over the years, doing all of these different courses with different emphases. And, we would do a move that I've done 10,000 times before, but suddenly we're doing it together in this particular course that has a completely different focus on, where I first learned that move, years ago. And you go, oh, hang on a second, yes, so in this context, this particular move or technique also gives me X, Y, and Z. So that's kind of what it's about. If you know what your kind of purpose is, what your focus is, you've got an awful lot of tools available that probably would serve you in some way, either directly or indirectly. So directly it would be, I'm working directly on that muscle or on that joint, for example, and I've got a whole bunch of techniques that do that. Indirectly would be like connecting more energetically with the kidney energy or with the water quality of your touch. So there's also an indirect way in. And what would do that? Some rocking, okay. Or more flow, okay, great. You see what I'm trying to say. Okay, so that's internal organs. Then we've got two more areas. One is, of course, the 5th area would be the bone structure, of course. We have the whole spine, and there can be a million things happening there along any of the vertebrae. But obviously, it's not just the vertebrae; it's also the discs. And as you know, quite a few people have herniated discs, and they will come to you also even with that big herniated disc story. Whether it is still herniated or not, I'm just going to leave out there. Or maybe they just believe they have a herniated disc. And also, actually, by the way, most of us probably have some herniation going on, and we don't even know about it. So, but yes, of course, there can be issues around the spine and their structure. There could be scoliosis or lordosis or kyphosis going on. There could be, bone issues happening there for sure. Then we have the sacroiliac joint. Sacroiliac joint that we also know can cause quite a lot of discomfort, and many people have something happening there because quite a lot because of, for whatever reasons, you know, a lot of the times the pelvis is a little bit misaligned, and that is causing quite a bit of havoc in that sacroiliac joint. So that could be a problem. And hey, I mean, like, we've definitely done a whole bunch of things already all around the sacroiliac joint, for sure. And obviously the whole pelvis and the hips as well. So all of that single leg stuff, for example, all the movements with the legs and some of the twists as well, and then those moves where we have either the fingers or the feet underneath the pelvis, and when they're in prone position, pressing on the back of the sacrum. So all of that stuff is going to help the pelvis settle, for things to release and free up around the hip joints, the sacroiliac joint, and then kind of trickling up into the lumbar spine. So all of that stuff is really, really great material that you already have to focus on that. And as part of this, there's also ligaments to bear in mind. And I mean, you know, in fairness, maybe, you know, at sort of level 1 and level 2 point, like, I can't now remember top of the head, I might not have given you any particular techniques that go right on a specific ligament. And all of that work that we'll be doing around the pelvis, for example, will also be maybe relieving some of the tension around those ligaments that hold and stabilize the sacrum in that sacroiliac joint. So again, indirectly, you're definitely going to be working with that very, very tough fascia that could be causing some of the issues. Again, also all of the ligaments around the diaphragm, for example. We've done some great work around the diaphragm, like that assisted pranayama, where we are, you know, really compacting the diaphragm and all of the rocking there. So again, you've already got quite a lot of great techniques there to indirectly work on freeing up the ligaments too. So yeah, that's the bone structure. That's, I mean, you know, obviously can also be at play. And then we have, as the last area, the whole world of the fascia, the connective tissues, all of that is kind of wrapping your bones and your muscles and your organs and basically everything that there is in your body. And we'll include the cranio-sacral system within that, because of course you have the dura mater, a kind of like a hose pipe kind of thing running through the spine, housing and protecting your spinal cord, and that kind of turns all the way up into a kind of sheet that wraps around your brain on the inside of the skull, and then going down all the way and attaching down to the base of the spine. And that's a very tough piece of fascia and could well have some tension, big time. And, you know, that is running right along your spine, inside your spine. So that could be also for sure the root cause for some complaints around the back. Now, craniosacral techniques, you know, you might feel like, oh, I don't really know about that. So I just already spoke about the sacrum. So we've got all of that stuff to possibly, you know, free up that sacrum that might be stuck. And if the sacrum is stuck, that whole craniosacral system is not in full communication, because it can't really, it's supposed to work together. They're supposed to move together in constant communication. And if the sacrum is stuck because maybe there is a structural thing or some other tension, or it could even be because of that mesentery, the sacrum is a bit stuck, you know, all of that is not working. So all of the techniques that we have around freeing up the pelvis, the hips, the lower back, and the sacroiliac joints, that's already great stuff. And we're going to be, again, indirectly also improving the craniosacral system. And then around the cranium, you know, the neck massage, so all of the tension in the suboccipital muscles and the neck muscles, there's so many, could be causing some problems there. We've all done the kind of occipital release where we were lifting the ridge of the occiput upright against the tips of the fingers and holding that for some time. So all of that stuff will be great. Again, so you have a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox already. So the question is, where do you start and which one do you pick? Or do I need to cover all of this in one treatment? So I guess this depends a little bit on the level of where you're at and how much you actually do have in your toolbox. What we are doing in the advanced course on back pain, which is coming up in, I should have written down the dates, at some point in May, is obviously adding more things into your toolbox for each one of those 6 areas. And then you might definitely have enough vocabulary, enough options to create a whole treatment protocol, maybe even just around one of those areas, or maybe you could check in with 2 of them. But that's probably as far as you can go within one treatment, because then you're out of time. So, that would probably be something that I would do in a treatment. If I'm not so sure what could be at the root of the problem, maybe I have a bit of an idea, and so we go explore. And I would probably explore only kind of 1 or 2 of those, because that's plenty as a focus in a treatment, because very likely there's also something else going on that we want to maybe address. I don't know. But also so that we can maybe get a little bit more clarity on how the body is responding to that, and to get some feedback, and for the person to observe how that kind of worked, or if it didn't really make a difference, because then we can also, in a way, by process of elimination, maybe figure out what's happening and what might be more useful, so we can, the next treatment, get that feedback and see if we want to focus on that more, or again, or differently, or whether we might want to completely shift area and dismiss it. So you see what I'm, kind of how that might work. And yes, so maybe initially at level 1 or level 2, you don't have maybe quite as many things in your toolbox, and maybe you could touch on more things, and you might be touching on them a little bit more generically. But still, just know that this is what you are doing. Bring some attention and focus to it. And yeah, kind of like be really smart about how you're putting your treatment together, even if that toolbox isn't packed with hours and hours and hours of choices. But yes, so basically, in a way, that's the point of further training, right? So of advanced training, that you have more choices, to have more options for the protocol that you put together for your treatment, that you have more choices and options to really focus on something, and in that way your treatment will get more and more and more specific, and maybe more therapeutic, I guess. And know that you're already doing all of it, even with just the level 2 material. I hope that's kind of making sense in some way. So yeah, I guess that's kind of really what the course is about, or why you would, whether it's this course on back pain or any of the other kind of further trainings, that's kind of, I guess, why we get hooked and keep on doing more training, because it just gives that kind of depth, as well as variety, I guess, and choices and options to create these kind of, what I don't really sort of like to think of it as like a sequence, because it seems to suggest that it's kind of set in stone. I quite like the word protocol, which is basically giving you like a structure and a framework within which you then kind of start to explore. And it also means that, you can sort of observe and monitor the effect of that, maybe with a little bit more clarity, if that makes sense. So that we do something and actually see how that might shift things in their body. And then one area that I think we need to really also bear in mind, so actually be a seventh, is of course that a lot of back pain is also kind of to do with all of the stories of life. It's very often emotional or anxiety, or kind of stories of some kind of drama of our life suddenly manifesting in some random pain, and something that is coming up, or kind of traumatic experience that maybe the person has completely coped with, but suddenly got sort of triggered, this whole pattern showing up in our system. So yeah, it's also very, very often somehow to do with the emotional world. And that takes me right back to what I was starting off with. It's, this is why it's so important that really we have no agenda ultimately. Yes, we might have a framework within which we explore to improve some of the conditions around the issue. But it's really just about creating that safe and comfortable environment where there is maybe a little bit less conflict, and where the person feels really safe enough to explore for themselves what it would be like to change the narrative of that story that is at play here and might have caused the pain. Very often in the first place, that person might not even realize that it's that's causing the pain. Maybe the person isn't even open to the idea that could be related, or maybe the person is not really quite ready to look at it, because of course that story most likely was constructed as a mechanism to cope. Maybe it was like the only way to feel safe. There's a whole armor that somebody has created. So there can be quite a lot at play there. And of course, none of this ever really happens in isolation. Things are always completely interrelated. And that is why we would see actual physical symptoms showing up too. So we can also just, it's definitely not going to do any harm to also deal with some of the symptoms and just, again, help create a little bit more comfort and support and a bit more rest in somebody's being, because we've alleviated some of the symptoms. Because again, that in turn would create a more comfortable and safe environment for people to, take a next step. So I hope that was somehow helpful. Any questions, please post below. Anything you want to add, anything that you've been trying and really find particularly helpful, or maybe you have a question around a specific case that you're working with and you're not so sure. Please use the comments below. Very happy to, add my 2 pennies worth if I have any, or to investigate also. And that's kind of also a part of the work. We need to sometimes play a little bit like detective and see what's going on and do some research for sure. Anyway, not only do I wish you all a wonderful weekend, but I also wish you a lovely and wonderful Easter. I hope that you get to connect with your loved ones over this weekend in some way that is meaningful, and that you get a little rest, and that it's a peaceful weekend for you. And I'll be seeing you again here hopefully next week. Take care, everybody.
Lots of love.